There are already some questions in the chat. Maybe we can, you know, have a chat about what's in the chat before we officially start the chat.
Sure.
There is a question about, what do you think about using ChatGPT for language editing or proofreading for a research article?
A good question. I don't have any objection to it at all. It's just another tool that can be used to support you to enhance the quality of your work. It's just about being critical of the output. Just making sure that, you know, whatever it generates, whatever it suggests when it comes to editing your work, that you yourself take ownership over that, and you yourself check that you feel you're comfortable with what you want to say. That would be my kind of suggestions for that.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem that different from Grammarly and other AI-based tools anyway, if it's just at the superficial level fixing your spelling and grammar. So
exactly, I think the same. Yeah, one thing would be just to make sure that, you know, when you're submitting it, you think about the policy terms, and that you don't enter anything into ChatGPT that might be sensitive or might reveal something about the participants of your study, anything like that. That'd be something to be conscious of. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
Let me share my screen.
I did use it myself. I didn't use it for editing, but I did put a research article in that I was writing, and asked it to evaluate it. I asked it to pretend to be an editor of a journal, and to evaluate the article based on originality, coherency, accuracy, and it came back with a pretty interesting response. That was cool.
Yeah. We still have 1 minute to go, so we'll wait out this minute in case more people are joining. So there will be no Zoom link. We're just using YouTube immediately, which is probably more convenient for everybody. At the end of the session, there will be a Zoom link for people who want to ask questions using their voice. Will be welcome to go and join the Zoom room. But you can always ask questions in the chat at any point. Okay, since it's time, let's get started. So welcome everybody to this session with Dr. Benjamin Luke Moorhouse. Just a brief background about Dr. Moorhouse. He is a fellow of Higher Education Academy, and he is an assistant professor in the Department of Education Studies, Faculty of Social Science, Hong Kong Baptist University, Hong Kong, China. He is a recipient of the President's Award for Outstanding Performance in Individual Teaching 2023 from Hong Kong Baptist University, and the Early Career Award, Teaching Award 2019 from the University of Hong Kong. His research focuses on experiences, beliefs, professional learning, and pre-service and in-service teachers, with a specific focus on English language teachers. Benjamin's research has appeared in international journals, including the Journal of Education for Teaching, Asian Pacific Education Researcher, Journal of Computers in Education, Interactive Learning Environments, System, TESOL Quarterly, RELC Journal, and ELT Journal. He is the author of 3 monographs, Writing with Young English Language Learners, 2022, 2020, Teaching Abroad During Initial Teacher Education, Springer 2022, Using Digital Portfolios to Develop Students' Writing, Routledge 2023 with Dr. Ricky Lam. Benjamin is currently leading the university task force responsible for developing principles and guidelines for using generative AI tools at his institution. Welcome, Benjamin. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm quite excited to talk about this topic today.
So ChatGPT, let's start with what is ChatGPT? Can you, give us an overview since you wrote this paper? This paper we are talking about today is ChatGPT for language teaching and learning at RELG, which is still in press, I guess. It should appear sometime soon.
Yeah, it's appearing in a special issue this summer, actually. Okay, so what is ChatGPT? It's a good question. It's kind of it's a type of generative AI that can kind of generate human-like content. So what makes ChatGPT special is kind of the format. It's very much like a chatbot. So you can kind of prompt it with something you want it to respond to, and it will give you kind of a response, but then you can interact with it. So it can remember the kind of response it gave, it can remember the prompt that you gave, and then you can respond to it again, respond to it again, respond to it again. Kind of deepening the kind of interaction with that and kind of developing the kinds of responses that it gives to you. And it can do a whole range of different tasks, which is something that we haven't really seen with AI tools before, particularly in language teaching and learning. They've been very specific on specific things that we want them to do. They've been built for specific purposes. Because of the general nature of ChatGPT, it can do a huge array of human tasks.
So when you say huge array of human tasks, so I'm sharing on my screen now ChatGPT. This is ChatGPT 3. This is the free version, free research preview. So let's have, for the sake of fun, let's ask ChatGPT something. Let's imagine that I was absent from my class and I want to write something to my teacher to say, sorry that I was absent, whatever. So let's say I missed my class. Let's say my English class yesterday. Write a letter. Well, write an email, let's be more specific, to my teacher. Let's say Professor Moorhouse. Right, let's say an apology letter. Oops. If we give it more specific instructions, it will give more quality answers. I am at university and my name is Ali, so that I don't have to put in my name, just automate it and see what results it will give. So let's go. So through the whole letter, let's have a look and see.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun. Subject: apology for missing English class. Dear Professor Moorhouse, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to sincerely apologize for my absence from yesterday's English class. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, I was unable to attend the session. I deeply regret not being present. Nice. I understand the importance of attending each class and the value of active participation in the learning process. Missing the class has caused me to miss out on valuable information, discussions, and opportunities to enhance my understanding of the subject matter. I take full responsibility for my absence and acknowledge that I was not in line with the commitment and dedication, nice, I strive to maintain as a student. I kindly request your assistance in catching up with the materials, oh, nice, covered during the class. I will make every effort to obtain the lecture notes from a classmate and review the corresponding reading and assignments. If there are any additional resources or materials you recommend to help me stay up to date, please let me know. I assure you, nice, it's still going on, that the absence was an exception, and I will make sure to attend all future classes as scheduled. I recognize the importance of consistent attendance and active participation in achieving academic success. Once again, I apologize for any inconvenience caused by our absence. I appreciate your understanding this matter. I value your expertise as an educator and look forward to making the most of the remaining. That's funny. Thank you for your attention and consideration. Interesting. This is an interesting letter.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this?
If you receive this from a student, you'll be pretty happy, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you notice is the letter is, incredibly, well written. Very, the English is accurate. There's no issues with the English at all. If there's any criticism, it would be that it's quite vague. But often this kind of email is quite vague anyway. Students may not specifically state what's wrong with them or why they miss class. But this is interesting. So it doesn't say what happened. So let's ask it. Yeah. Give a reason. See, rewrite this email. State that the reason for missing the class was a death in my family. Let's make it interesting. Pick a family member. It's going to be fun. Give them a name and explain plausible cause of death. Just for sake of drama, make the tone sad. Let's see what happens now. Yeah. So, dear Professor Moorhouse, I hope this email finds you amidst understanding and compassion during this difficult time. It's with deep sadness that I write to inform you that the reason for my absence from yesterday's English class, regrettably, a tragic event unfolded in my family and I was unable to attend the session. My beloved grandmother, Mrs. Elizabeth, you should use an Arabic sounding name because, but anyway, passed away unexpectedly. Her sudden demise has left our family devastated and mourning her loss. As a pillar of strength and wisdom in our lives, her departure has created an immense void, oh my God, that we are struggling to come to terms with. In the midst of this profound sorrow, I understand the significance of attending each class and fulfilling my academic responsibilities. However, the emotional toll and the need to be with my family during this challenging period compelled me to be absent from the classroom. I apologize deeply for any inconvenience or disruption this may have caused. I kindly request your understanding and empathy as I navigate through this difficult time. If there were any vital course materials, announcement, discussions I missed during the class, I would greatly appreciate your guidance in catching up. I'm committed to reacquainting myself, so interesting language, with the subject matter, ensuring that I stay on track on the course, although it's a kind of long message. Although I understand my personal circumstances cannot alter the missed class, I genuinely regret not being present. I value your expertise as an educator and recognize the importance of engaging in class discussions, collaborative learning, and exchange of ideas. I assure you that this absence was an exceptional circumstance and not a reflection of my dedication and commitment as a student. I will make every effort to attend all future classes and actively participate, utilizing the knowledge and skills imparted by your instruction. Thank you for your understanding and consideration during this difficult time, etc., etc. So interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's come up with some really interesting ideas here. Like you say, it's a bit long.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But then
can ask it to shorten it, it
it,
will write
exactly, that's the thing. Like as we keep working with it, if we're finding things wrong with it, we can just keep tweaking it with these prompts, and we get better and better work that better and better aligns with what we want it to achieve. But it's still it's producing something that we could never would be take so much longer to produce ourselves, which is what's making this so revolutionary and at the same time so disruptive, I think.
Yeah. Now, what this reminds me is that when I was reading your paper, something interesting in figure 3 particularly, can you write an advertisement from an electric company, and et cetera, and then it said, this is what caught my attention, you can trust that you are in good hands. Now with ChatGPT, I don't trust anymore. This was written by a human. This is I don't trust anything that I read online anymore because of the possibility that it was written by AI, which is, a glaring irony.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a really, really good observation, right? Because the trust was already going away, right? And now the trust is gone completely because of this. Yeah. So anytime our students now email us with an excuse for why they missed class, we're automatically going to assume it was written by ChatGPT, but now we're not going to show whether the reason is real or not either. Did they use it to create the idea, or did they really have that reason? We won't know.
We can make it fun and say, rewrite this email as a poem.
Yeah.
We can make it more interesting and say in the style of, I don't know, Robert Frost, and see what happens. I would say make it a bit shorter.
It's usually okay with spelling mistakes too.
Yeah, which is in sorrow's shroud, I find my words entwined to seek solace as grief shadows my mind. For in the midst of anguish, I failed to attend yesterday's. And I strive to express the depth of my sorrow, my heartfelt distress. Please understand as I strive to atone for missing my class, my sin. I
even added my name as one of the lines. Yeah, and then it's helped. It tried to explain why it's used a poem in an email about a class absence as well. So it's not just written a poem; it's actually tried to explain why it's used a poem. So,
Alan Poe, I think this is going to be interesting. What's going to happen? Is it just a poem, or what's it midnight? I apologize.
Stephen's lament for the missed English class.
Professor Moorhouse, hear my somber plea as I recount a tale of sorrow.
Scary, right?
Yeah. With pen in hand and grief in my core, I offer this ode and a lament for evermore. Accept my apologies, my soul's confession, and grant my pardon in your benevolent discretion. Forever yours in sorrow's embrace. What did it say for Robert Frost? Just yours sincerely. Interesting. It's a bit different.
A bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, just as you said, when students write to us, now this is there are two things here we're going to talk about. First, people will ask about student motivation. Students may say, why should I learn English if I can just write one short prompt, maybe even in my native language, and get this perfectly sounding excellent that even a native speaker would take a long time to produce. On the other hand, which is the more pressing policy issue, is exam integrity and cheating in assessment. So let's start with cheating and exam integrity first. What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's a big issue. I mean, we've already faced it this semester, and I don't know if you faced it as well. We've had a number of essays that have been flagged. We've been using Turnitin, and it's got an AI detection tool, which is not very accurate, but yet it's still been picking up work that is AI generated. And then we've spoken to students afterwards, and we give them a kind of a mini Viva on their submissions, and we've established that that work was not their own. So it's already happening. The students are finding ways to use it, and I'm sure the ones we're picking up through these kinds of tools are the ones that are not using it well. They're the ones yeah. So if they're using it well, they can evade those tools without difficulty, because they're just picking up anything that's kind of written just by basically write me an essay about. It's only picking up those kinds of ones. It's not the ones where the students have been using multiple tools, or the ones that have been continually prompt, or the ones where students have asked it to humanize the language it's used. Those ones we're not picking up.
So currently, do you have any policies at your institution about ChatGPT generated submissions in exams?
So the policies are not official yet, but in the coming semester, it's likely to be a kind of we're going to likely to have a kind of a policy around transparency, where they have to declare their use, and each instructor will have to make it clear what uses generative AI tools can be used for within their kind of course areas. And then it's going to have to be, there's going to have to be a combination of different kinds of assessments to make sure that if this core knowledge that we think students need, that we feel that we don't want them to use generative AI for, then they're going to have to likely do that in a test-like situation. And then any other things where we feel that AI can support them to do it, then we're going to have to revise the assignments so they can't be done with generative AI, but can be done with the assistance of generative AI. So that's kind of the direction we're going in.
So doesn't this also require changes in the curriculum?
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah. So the thinking is we have to make fairly substantial curriculum change, and that will be different depending on the different courses that our teachers are teaching here. So there's the kind of pushes for more kind of experiential activities, more reflective tasks, less knowledge demonstration, more knowledge application and reflection, these kinds of things, more emphasis on process. So trying to get students to reflect on process, show evidence of process, so kind of combinations between different assessments and how they're building up to something, those kinds of things. But we're not.
Yeah, so how about faculty? Do they have enough training to implement? Short answer.
Definitely not. Yeah, we've been having some consultations about like our guidelines and principles that we're trying to develop, and we can definitely see from colleagues that they don't feel confident or competent to kind of make the changes. On the basic level, we're just asking them, please just run your current assignment tasks through ChatGPT or other generative AI tools and see what happens. See if it can do your tasks and how well it can do your tasks as the first step. And then from there, start thinking what you need to change. Yeah, because I did that and I was like, okay, that task I cannot do. It was a kind of traditional kind of like error correction task where I give the students like a piece of students' work and ask them to do error correction. And then from there, explain why a Cantonese learner would have made those kinds of errors and what kind of pedagogical interventions the teacher might use in order to help the student. It found all the errors pretty much. It explained the errors from a Cantonese speaker's perspective, and it gave pretty good intervention strategies. with references. So one of the things they mentioned is like it doesn't have references, but it does have references. If you prompt it right, it will come up with pretty good references as well, and real ones if you prompt it right.
Yeah, and if we look at the, let's move on to the next topic, away from assessment a bit to teaching itself. Now, teachers usually face several challenges that can be solved by this tool. For example, teachers usually have large numbers of students in one classroom, so they have to resort to lecturing. This is the first problem. The second problem, students can have different ability levels, which complicates things. So you don't know who to cater to specifically. So teaching becomes less personalized. And then the third problem is that students have different preferences. So if you have a teaching passage about, say, sports, for example, some students may not like this sport and may not be interested. Again, this goes back to student motivation. Or something about shopping, and some students may not be interested in learning more about shopping or whatever. But with ChatGPT, you can easily ask it to create, let's have a demonstration here. I'm going to start a new chat so that I'm going to say, write a reading passage, about an animal. Let's see what ChatGPT gives. Let's say in about, we don't want it to be too long, 100 words. Let's make it more specific for learners of English as a foreign language at A2 level, just to be more specific. And then say enter. The penguin, okay. And you have a passage about the penguin. You say generate, regenerate. The red fox, you have another one about the red fox. And then you have generate. The dolphin, and you have a different reading passage about the dolphin. So you can create multiple passages, reading passages for students very easily with just one click. You can say write 3 multiple choice. I will leave this misspelling intentionally because ChatGPT will recognize what I intend to say. Multiple choice questions about this passage. Okay, what's the main characteristic of dolphin, etc., etc. Give me the answer key. So it gave me the answer, and the answer. So we can say, for an exam, we can say write exam questions about this passage. Use Bloom's taxonomy. And I will leave the spelling mistake because it will recognize what I want to say, which is interesting. Knowledge level, identify, etc., etc. Comprehension level, explain, etc., etc. Application level, analyze. No, it's nothing. For the third question, learners may require additional information or guidance to formulate their answers. Yeah, maybe if you ask it to create a longer passage, then it will create, give me model.
But this is great. This is great guidance for a teacher, right? When they tell you that, they're trying to prompt you to not just take what I've said as a question, but to realize that it may not be good enough.
Yeah. So it solves a lot of problems that students, that teachers face on daily basis using these tools. So educational institutions should probably embrace this technology and train their faculty on the potential and the application of these tools to their curriculum.
I think that's one thing that's really quite interesting, is the fact that it's got so much potential for teaching and learning. But because of the way we've always traditionally done assessment, that's where a lot of the attention of the media and people have gone, because of that concern. And they've kind of, they haven't spent the time to think about these kind of huge potentials it has for teaching and learning yet. And I think what your example there shows that, that we can really start to focus on that the assessment is a concern, but perhaps we need to think about what's the purpose of those assessments, and how do we better measure learning now that we can personalize learning better, now that we can support and scaffold learning better, now that we can kind of teach our students to become more self-paced and self-directed with these kinds of tools as assistants, as part of their learning. Then what's the assessment? What's the assessment for? And we'll have to think more about that, I think.
Have you had a chance to talk with your students about this? Have they started using it, or what's their attitudes towards it?
Yeah, I've had a few students talk to me about how they've used it, and they like it. That's the first response. They like it. They can see kind of huge potential for its use in helping them to kind of learn and to kind of be there as like an assistant on the side when they are learning. And yeah, I mean, I think they're still in early days of kind of understanding its potential as well. And I think that's a process we have to go through with them, is how do we help them to see how it can be used to support their learning. I think when anyone uses it the first time, they're just overwhelmed with how impressive it is with what it can do. And then it's kind of having to step back and thinking, okay, now how does this help me? What does this mean for me? And I think those are the conversations I still haven't had with my students, but we need to have those conversations, I think, so they can kind of figure its uses out. Because I think there's a risk. It's one of the things we've been thinking about, is the risk that students can become over-reliant on it. It's so easy to do tasks for them. So we have to help them to see it as an assistant to help them to achieve something they want to achieve. So much more emphasis now needs to go on that kind of self-directed learning, self-regulated learning side of things, because they're the ones that have to be able to say, I can create an essay on this tool, or I can use it to help me to create an essay on this tool. And they will have to be more conscious about that decision-making process, and what they gain and what they lose by making those different choices.
Yeah, this is interesting. When it comes to self-directed, independent learning.
Yeah.
Before the session, I dug up some of my research, and I'm going to share my screen showing something. So this is a sample. It's one of my research projects. We asked students to write an essay. So this is one essay written by a student, kind of A2 student. There are some mistakes, problems here and there. Muslims have many great seasons. For example, in Ramadan, Muslims, etc., etc. And when I first read this essay, there are things that I didn't understand. For example, Muslims in Eid al-Fitr neck the poor. And I said, what's neck the poor? When I put it in ChatGPT, it actually explained that the intention of the student was to say, knock on the doors of the poor.
Wow.
And it's just and explained what the student wanted to say, actually. And here, for example, furthermore, Muslims in Eid hang light bulbs. And I said, bulbs, what is bulbs? ChatGPT said light bulbs. I said, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So let's have a go and put it in ChatGPT and say, pretend you are a teacher. Give feedback on this essay. I'm going to press enter without putting in the essay, see how it reacts. So it's probably commenting on the previous essays here. So I'm going to start a new chat.
Yeah. That's what.
Pretend you are a teacher. Give feedback on this essay. I'm going to press enter without giving it any essay.
It's made it up.
It's made up something. Yeah, it made up something.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to put it again here. I'm going to say, now give feedback on this essay. Again, there is a spelling mistake. I'm going to ignore this spelling mistake because it will understand what I want to say.
But I mean, that example just shows one of the issues with it as well, though, doesn't it? It just made it up.
Yeah.
It should have come back and said there is no essay here. You know, that's what a human would do.
Yeah, it gave it wrote a whole essay on apparently what did it write? This essay provides an overview of the festival Supreme, etc., etc. This essay begins by, you know, it didn't quite understand what I wanted it to say. So I'm going to start a new chat, you know, again, say, pretend you are a language teacher, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Give me feedback on this. Yeah.
Maybe you could put corrective feedback. Maybe put corrective feedback.
Corrective feedback, okay.
And
Corrective feedback on this essay. Okay, so introduction, paragraph 1, the most important occasions. So.
Oh, so now it's actually corrected it.
Yeah. You know, provide, force of habit, I always fix my spelling mistakes. Provide your feedback in a table. Okay, now it's started to understand what I want to say now. Oh, so proceed, Prophet Ibrahim. Okay, I didn't understand what the student wanted to say. Now I understand. Okay. I don't think the student wanted to say to emulate. Maybe it's just, you know, the closest thing that ChatGPT thought the student wanted to say. So here is the light bulb. Okay, now rewrite this essay after fixing these issues.
And then a follow-up question is like, if you are the teacher, what advice would you give to the student on areas to work on?
Okay. If you are a teacher, what advice would you give to this student? You know, question mark. Improve sentence structure. Oops.
Too much.
Use appropriate vocabulary. Proofread your spelling grammar errors. Develop ideas with supporting details. Organize your essay. Seek feedback and revise. Yeah.
So it's a bit general. So again, you can become more specific. You know, what language, what advice might you give to improve that language?
Language. Yeah. Advice would you give to this student would you give to this student? So sentence structure, vocabulary, spelling and grammar, word choice, cohesion and coherence, register and style, practice, feedback. Say, provide this feedback in a table, add an example for each. Yeah, so it gives you some examples about what you need to do.
So if we can teach our students to do this, if we
Yes.
can teach students to prompt it well, then
talk about autonomy. Now talk about autonomy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think this is where it becomes a super awesome teaching aid, is when we can teach our students how to prompt, how to get feedback that helps them to move something forward. That's what we can do with it, I think, in our classrooms.
Yeah, so going back to the original point we talked about, which is student motivation. So some students now may say, why should I learn in the first place if I can just, input a simple prompt and get what I need? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this question. I don't think this is a ChatGPT issue. I think this is an AI issue, because I'm imagining the universal translator from Star Trek is very close to be a reality now with AI. The fact that it can happen so quickly, and it can understand natural human processing, even error, and it can respond instantly. I can imagine the need to use language the need to know in a foreign language could diminish theoretically because of this. So I do see some risk there of that.
One way, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe if we adapt what we teach to, we say, use ChatGPT to do this authentic task.
Yeah.
Okay, get the assistance you need from it, because you will be able to use it when you get a job anyway. So let's train you to do it from now. Then you will be responsible for whatever ChatGPT gives you. So you have to be careful, read it carefully, see the accuracy, etc., then submit your work.
Yeah, so I think the learner motivation must be strengthened. The reason to learn must be much more prominent. It can't be task oriented anymore. It can't be that I want to finish this task, therefore I am motivated. It has to be, I am motivated to improve myself. That's the motivation that has to be core, I think, and we have to push as much as possible. And then all these things become resources in that journey to doing that. I think we've relied a lot on task motivation, that we develop tasks that we think students want to achieve, and that kind of pushes them through that one task. And then we give them another task, and then we give them another task. But I think now we're going to have to focus much more on that kind of primal motivation, that desire to better ourselves. And language being one of those things, that learning language betters ourselves, and focus a lot on that as much as we can, I think. When we talk to students, when we think about learning, when we think about these things, I've been thinking about, we all still learn to ride a bike, even though we invented the car. We don't need a bike to get around, but we still learn to ride a bike, and we still want to learn to ride a bike. People still want to learn to play the piano, even though we have music available to us. We don't need to be able to play piano to enjoy music. We don't need to be able to ride a bike to get around. We want to learn those things. And I think that motivation has to come through into almost everything now. And then all these things become resources to help with that journey of learning, right? I think that's one thing. And then, yeah, I think you're right. Like we need to, we can try and teach them how these things help them. And then they have them as a resource to help them. Right?
Here is one thought. Now, yeah, there is another example in history that is to some extent relevant to our case. When the calculator was first invented, there was some panic that nobody will study math.
Yeah.
Why would you need to study math when you have the calculator? You just plug in the numbers and you get the answer. But what actually happened, now we can teach calculus at university. You know, without calculators, it's unimaginable that you can teach something as advanced as, I don't know, calculus 2 and 3, for example. So what actually happened in effect was that we were able to expand the teachable curriculum.
Yeah.
We are able to go to areas that were foreclosed. So when we come to language learning, if you give students, for example, a task to read a passage, for example, and extract some ideas from it, usually if the passage is, say, it's an article, for example, of 15, 20 pages, they may need the whole week to do this task. But with ChatGPT, you can ask him to read 5 books, analyze them in ChatGPT, extract the ideas relevant to whatever thing, summarize them in a table, get other things, etc., whatever task you want them to do, and then write, you know, a 1 page summarizing these ideas and present it to your students tomorrow morning. Now we can do much more than traditional teaching.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that analogy. I've had the calculator analogy a lot, but I hadn't seen it the way you just described it. It's always been gone the other way of, like, you know, what we lost because of the calculator, that we lost mental arithmetic. But the way you've just described it is really, really important. The fact that, yes, we may have lost mental arithmetic in a sense, but then we gained so much more because it allowed us to do so much more. And I think your analogy there when it comes to ChatGPT and generative AI is spot on. I think a lot of the time that we spend doing things that are low level can now be done, and we can push our thinking higher. We can push our tasks higher. We can push our expectations higher. And the complexity will increase, but then that's probably beneficial because that means that the learning will increase.
Yeah, and you have you know, there is always a trade-off. If you go big, then you will miss out on the small things, the fine-tuned details, sentence to sentence, but you can vary your tasks at the end of the day. You know, you can have tasks at a global level like this. You can have other tasks that at the paragraph level where they analyze specific things.
But all within the conversation of what we're gaining and losing, right? Making us critically aware, making our students critically aware of what they're gaining and losing by engaging in these kinds of tasks and things like this, right? So, you know, if you use it this way, this is what you gain. If you use it this way, this is what you lose. If you are critical, if you engage it critically, this is you know, the kinds of things you can do with it. If you engage it superficially, this is the kinds of things you're going to get from it. And like you say, when they go to the workforce, that's going to be happening. The people who are engaging it critically are the ones that are going to have more success, because the ones engaging it superficially, anyone can do that. Anyone can write an email now. You don't even have to be able to write English, like you just said. You could write it in any language and say, write this email in English, and you can pretty be sure it's probably good enough that someone would assume you can speak good enough English to write that email. But then when it comes to it, it's like, well, basic email writing won't be a skill we need anymore. We're going to need more advanced skills than that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this is something we have to be really, really conscious of, that kind of future skill set of our graduates. the future needs of language learners and language speakers. These are all things we need to be really conscious of when we're introducing this tool to our students, but also talking about this tool with our students, but also preparing our students for that reality as well.
Yeah, okay, so let's move on to the last subject we will discuss in this chat, which is ChatGPT and research.
Yeah.
So what's your take?
I go through different takes every day. My initial thing was, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. This is going to save me so much time. I recently just did a paper, and I used GPT-4 to do some qualitative coding. So I coded the data myself first on Vivo, and then I gave the same data set to ChatGPT-4, and the codes were very similar. It was quite impressive how well it coded the data set, and it wasn't an easy data set. It was interview transcripts, with lots of natural language features and things like this. And I was like, wow, this is huge. What a great tool to support my research efforts, and how quick it can help my research efforts. But at the same time, the other concern I've been having is like, well, now, the kind of process in place, the journal process in place, I don't know if it's ready to handle this.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I have colleagues who do qualitative research, and just do some numbers here. If we have, pull out the calculator here, mental arithmetic. So for somebody who has, let's say, 20 people to interview, and for each interview there is 60 minutes. Let's say you have 3 interviews with each participant, so you have 3,600 minutes. So this is actually, so 600 by 60. Why does it? So yeah, okay, 60. So 60 hours. That what confused me. So 60 hours of audio.
Yeah.
That you need to transcribe.
Yeah.
So some of my friends take months and months just at the mundane. I'm focusing on this, the mundane aspect of transcribing, or paying huge amounts of money for somebody to transcribe it. Now you can automate this process, and even you don't need InVivo. You just ask ChatGPT to analyze, extract the main themes. It will probably do it better than the average researcher. Anyway, if the human intuition can do something, ChatGPT can emulate it anyway.
And if you give it like a theoretical framework or conceptual framework to do the analysis of, using that as the base for the analysis, then yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So at some point, I would imagine that we will have tools that you can input the audio recording themselves, or even, let's say, the video recordings, and just analyze it, and you just sit back and enjoy your coffee. And it will not only analyze the language, but it will also be able to analyze the facial expressions, the hesitations, the tone, other things, the way you ask it. You just snap your finger and you get the results. Better than human coders, maybe, because in human coding, you will go through, multiple coders, and you will calculate inter-rater reliability, and you will usually have disagreements, and you have to sort out these disagreements, etc., etc. All these mundane tasks will be automated, will free up your time to focus on the higher level thinking related to your research.
Yeah.
I think the potential applications of these tools is just limited by your imagination only. I can imagine a tool where you say, okay, here is a 2-hour podcast, summarize this podcast, extract the main ideas, fact check them, because sometimes, it can easily fact check, dates and names and other things. Sort out the uncontroversial ideas on one side, and the controversial ideas on the other side, and list the counterpoints to the controversial ideas. And just that's it. You don't have to listen to a 2-hour podcast. You can have one page summarizing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you think.
Well, theoretically, you could probably put the entire archive of YouTube into it, analyze every single video that was ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's not really theoretical, because it's possible. So for example, all you need is to get the API. Sometimes you have to pay for it if you're using Google or Twitter, for example. So in practice, not in theory, you can get this API and ask ChatGPT to say, find the official Twitter accounts of major American universities, check out their policies, what they tweeted about their policies related to using ChatGPT in exams, summarize these points, compare whether there are any differences between Republican states and Democratic states.
Yeah.
And it is not a theoretical argument. This is possible. You can do it today. You just need to pay Twitter some fees to get the API to use it in ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
So welcome to the new world.
Yeah. You're exactly right. Yeah, these are the potentials are endless. It's just you just have to explore. You just have to think of them, like you just said. You just got to think of what they are, and then you can ask it to help you to do it, assist you in this process. But so I'm thinking it's going to up our game dramatically. What we can do and what we're capable of doing is going to up our game, which will be beneficial to human knowledge generation and human advancement. But I think the research community will also have to have a conversation about, like, what it then wants, because there will be this challenge where now everyone can write. There's going to be a lot of, to find the good articles is going to get harder, if that makes sense.
What do you mean?
Because there's going to be so much out there.
Yeah, you can ask ChatGPT to help you.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Ask ChatGPT to help me to find the good articles. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's just about your imagination. It's clearly my imagination is. I need you to kind of remind me of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that ability to critically engage with it and to just think about what it can do, just to imagine what it can do, is key. Yeah.
So this has been an interesting discussion about ChatGPT and its potential in the educational process generally, including assessment, teaching and learning, independent learning, and even research. Let's open up the door for questions. I just shared the information to the Zoom room. If anybody would like to join the Zoom room and ask questions, you are welcome to do so now. Or if you can post your question in the chat also at any time, you are welcome. So there is a question about Turnitin. How good is Turnitin in proofreading and editing content? Yeah, I think the relevant question to today's discussion is how good is it in detecting ChatGPT generated content? And I think you can easily fool it. I don't think it will be hard for students to fool, ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think anything that gets picked up is students' laziness or students' lack of competence in using it. It's not whether they used it or not. It's the competence to use it well. So I think we've seen some cases this semester because they're just learning how to use it for the first time. But I think in the long term, it won't have any.
Yes, so we have Amal. Do you have a question? Yes, so we have some guests in the room. Amin Al-Asam, would you like to ask your question? Dr. Khalid Urabi. Can you hear me? Ilaf. Parrot, yes.
Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for this, talk. My question is about the detection of AI-generated text. Students can submit their assignments by benefiting from, ChatGPT generated text, but I have tested several texts. For example, Turnitin or other detectors cannot detect, the poems or short stories written by ChatGPT. So it's based on my experience. And there are some other tools on the internet, which students can use to edit, paraphrase, etc. And sometimes, even the text has been written by ChatGPT and it has been detected by these tools. There is a disclaimer. It says that you cannot use as a kind of evidence against, student or any kind of submission. So what do you think about this? Because in the past, it was easy because Turnitin was just checking the websites, etc. And when you use when sometimes some texts from the internet, it was showing the evidence. But now it just says, for example, it is 80% AI written, but there is no evidence for that. So what can we do about this?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Excellent question. So actually, Turnitin and the other AI detection tools, which are also using AI, by the way, to do the detection of AI, they don't state how they do it. They haven't made it aware how they detect. We can make the assumption that they're looking for semantic and syntactic clues. They're looking for certain sentences that are common to text generated by AI. And certain kinds of vocabulary that AI may generally use over other kinds of vocabulary. But basically, this is what we think they're doing. So of course, they will only pick up certain kinds of genres, like academic texts, things like this, not stories or poems or something like this, because they won't follow the patterns that the AI detection tools have been trained in. I think they've been designed specifically to try and get the kind of classic essay. So I think that's true of it, and I think they're only good at picking up something that has been written, like basically like a student has copy and pasted something that's just been generated from a simple prompt in one of these tools. If there's any work done to it at all, any paraphrasing, any amendments made, use of multiple tools or tools that those tools, the detection tools haven't been tested on, then it isn't picking those up. And I think students will become more aware of what kinds of texts and what kinds of sentences will get picked up by these. And there has been evidence that second language learners are actually more likely to get picked up as AI, even if it's their own work, because of the kind of language structures they use. So these are all things we need to be conscious of. Yeah. So in our institution, we're trying to go away from the kind of cat and mouse approach. So we're going to have to change our orientation, that it's not about trying to catch those that use generative AI. It's about thinking about how we want them to use generative AI, because they are going to use it. So we have to think about how do we talk to them about it, how do we use it with them, and also how do we educate them about what they gain and lose by using it, so they become more critical of their use, and then have some ways to verify, like oral assessments and in-class assessments as well, in addition to those other assessments as well.
Yeah, so I have two comments about this question. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
First, ChatGPT, GPT-0, that's the app that detects AI-generated content. It's not accurate. You know, I tried it. I asked ChatGPT to produce something. I copy-pasted it immediately into GPT-0. Is it AI-based? It said, no, it's original. You know, I just copied it a moment ago. So it's not accurate. And even if it does have some accuracy, it is still hackable. Perhaps easily people will get to know how to use it. The second thing is that progressives, I would imagine, would say, if you need to detect cheating, then you are doing education wrong. Let students do whatever they want to do. In the end is the final product, what you want, and are students able to discuss it and talk about it and explain it and own it or not? That's the whole point. Can they own it? Do they understand this? If you have an interview with them about this, do they understand it? Because, a simple example is writing an email. If they have a job and they want to send an email, what's the harm of using ChatGPT? The harm is if you don't understand anything, you could screw up things, right? If you send an email to a different company and then you have the wrong information, you can mess up the whole company, your contract with that company or whatever. So yeah, whether students can own it or not.
Can I come in with my input?
Yes. Sure. Mohammed, yes.
Yeah, it has been great, experiencing on hand using ChatGPT. Showed us all the ways, and I have had some experience of using not just ChatGPT, the others also. Like there are competitive, like Merlin AI and POI, and I mean there are so many chatbots in the market these days. And there's no dearth of such tools, and the tools are being used extensively worldwide and on every platform. I mean, Twitter or Facebook, or even they're thinking of adding it as WhatsApp. And I mean, this is all everywhere. So the genie is out of the bottle. It's pointless, wasting our energy on how to put it back. In fact, we're already largely exposed to, and we have been exposed to in the past, in the form of one technology or the other, Siri and those kinds of, like I don't have to mention, there are hundreds of them. As far as AI detective, efforts are concerns, they are not fail safe, and it's like a self-defeating exercise for the time being, because you cannot derail this or impede the fast process of getting this into the hands of those people who are maybe responsible, immoral people. Or so when it comes to AI into conversation and educational, okay, we get to see its ramifications. We know how far we can control. There will be restrictions and all, like watermarking. The people, I mean, like the companies are coming up with restrictions and watermarking all documents, so that there's less of copyright violations. And probably we're going to have it very soon, because we cannot let loose this. It could go into the wrong hands. It could, alter all the kind of academic, achievements that so far have been achieved. I mean, like scholarly articles or on creations of all sorts. Now, there's no harm in using its extension in the sense that, I mean, we can weaponize our students with this as long as we are behind the scene. We are more prompt at guiding them how to what extent we leverage it in the classroom and outside. And I found it quite handy, but we still need a lot of expertise in how, because this double-edged sword, and I'd call it, it's very effective in getting you the output in a flash, but it's equally harmful because it's so repetitive, bland, sometimes give you inaccurate information. Also, it doesn't have the, morality of checks and balances are not there. So checks and balances are missing, but that doesn't mean that we are not, empowered to bring into effect in our daily life. And it's already there. I believe that in this part of the world is a little bit late opening, late arrival. We are more than hesitant to welcome it. In fact, let's welcome it in open hand, because it's a technology, and technology transfer and transitioning will always be there. And we have never, I mean, it has been a losing battle fighting the new technology coming in. Tomorrow will be all EVs cars, and we say, no, we'll drive only, diesel based and petrol based, and we cannot go to the horses age where you used to have chariots and all that. So, and you talked about this computational ability, how we have advanced our. So since our tasks are mammoth, we are having more into the coming like extensive research, extensive and multifaceted 21st century skills and life competencies are too many now. We cannot be handled simply because we have one tool or the other. We're trading one tool for the other. There are hundreds of them. I mean, I've come across so many of them. And it seems like I was a Luddite and I was unknown, unfamiliar with those things. Once I delved deeper into this, then I came to know the vastness of it and the kind of researches and the phenomenal growth. And it's like exponential. It's not just Microsoft, it's Google, it's Power, and it's all about commerce. They're making lots of money. And simply because something's coming from chatbot and all, doesn't mean that it's really filthy. And it's stigmatized kind of things. Now, our job is to harness it, is to optimize our learners' desirable outputs in the classroom and outside, and with assignment based, and how quickly we can integrate this. And it's like embedding these kind of things in our regular traditional classrooms and teaching.
Yeah, Mr. Muhammad, thank you for this great comment. Yeah. Definitely, we need to integrate ChatGPT and other emerging technologies in our education, or education will be behind. We are not otherwise preparing students for the real life. Thank you for this comment.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, Tawhida, you have a question? Salam.
When we talk about ChatGPT, for students, a teacher can easily detect, because every teacher knows the caliber of the students, how much their potential is. So a teacher can easily detect whether he has or she has used it, wrote any assignment or essay by itself, or has used any AI-based technology. So a teacher can easily detect. So my question is how helpful it will be for researchers, and how helpful it will be for reviewers to review or to write any research article when we talk about researcher, and how a reviewer, because a reviewer, how he can understand about whether the document is AI generated or something like that.
Yeah, Dr. Ben, do you have to chip in?
So if we're reviewing for a journal article, for example, a manuscript, and we don't know the author, how would we know if something's generated by AI or not? Is that the question?
Yeah, generally, in terms of research in journals and publication.
Yeah. In terms of, for example, if I need to analyze a novel, I will put, for example, I want to analyze the novel, The Merchant of Venice. I will put in ChatGPT. It will give me the whole result. If I will put the same in the research article, how it will be detected, and how the reviewer would know that it has been AI generated or it is by a human being. How he would differentiate between the two?
I don't think they can currently. So I think I think most journals or most publishers are going for the kind of declaration model, that if an author uses some kind of generative AI, they have to declare their use, and they have to take ownership over what they produce.
Is there any software to detect it? Because as a reviewer, we review many articles. So as a reviewer, is there any software that I can use? Like there are many plagiarism softwares that we use. Will they detect it or not?
No. That's what we were just saying. It's the same tools. I mean, it's ChatGPT, it's GPT-0, Turnitin, AI detection tool. there's several other tools, but they won't detect it accurately, and they may detect some human-created content as generative AI content. So we can't rely on them as tools to help us to do this. So as a reviewer, I guess the current understanding would be, and anyone can agree, is that we assume it's written by human at this point.
Okay, so in future we cannot rely, or we cannot say that research is reliable, because we cannot trust whether it is well done or it's by AI generated. So we cannot rely.
We can only rely on the fact that, you know, the author who authored it would have to declare that they're the author. Like, they can't say ChatGPT is the author, so they have ownership. So we're still based on that kind of principle that we assume that people want to put their name on work that they've generated themselves, that they feel comfortable and confident to put their name on their work. I think that's the current understanding, and then declare any tools they use, but understand that they still have ownership over, they still have responsibility for what they created.
Yeah, and I expect that we will have to go through a crisis of confidence in academic research for several years before we figure out where we should be going. So I think this is inevitable.
Because that is the main question, because the research should be reliable. So in future, we cannot rely whether it is practically done or it's AI generated. It will be a huge crisis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Moving on, Yasmin, do you have a question?
Yes, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank you for sharing the information about this interesting program. It is quite amazing indeed. Actually, I have two questions. My first question is there any Arabic version of ChatGPT? And my other question, I think I have to skip it because it has already been asked. I wanted to ask if I use the program for research purposes, can this be easily detected or show any sign of plagiarism? And I have a request also, please. Would you please share with us the link to this program? Thank you very much.
Let me find.
Yeah, so to answer the Arabic question, the Arabic language question, you can use any language you want, but I would imagine that in English, it will give you the best answers because it has been trained on a lot more English language than other languages. Maybe this may change in the future. And if you use the paid version, GPT-4, you may get even more quality answers. Regarding plagiarism, well, we'll see, it's the question of ownership, I guess, and you have to follow the journal policies. Some journals like Nature journals have, I think, a blanket policy that you cannot use ChatGPT, period, no questions. Some journals may have different policies. So you need to check the policy of the journal you are targeting and see whether GPT is allowed or not.
Yeah, I just shared the guidelines from COPE, which is the Committee on Publication Ethics, which many journals subscribe to. And this is their current statement on authoring and the use of AI tools. So usually if we're looking at the use of tools in our research work, then we need to follow the guidelines from the journals and also the guidelines from Committee on Publication Ethics. These are the kinds of places we can see. So if we breach these ethical guidelines, then we are responsible for that. And it may not get picked up when we initially submit, or even when our paper gets published, but you never know down the line. So I think we just have to take that.
Okay, so we have Munir. Do you have a question?
Hello, good evening or good afternoon, Ali and Benjamin. Thank you very much for such a very interesting discussion. I think when I read the article about ChatGPT is here to stay. That kind of like, got me concerned, and because it's true, and I lean more forward to be one of those cynics about this whole, AI thing, for the reasons that, even if we talk about drawbacks and disadvantages so far, it's not accurate enough and so on and so forth. I'm sure, all of these will develop in the near future and will almost, perfect every aspect of it. But what got me really concerned was that when Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, actually mentioned a few weeks ago, and he said that AI, the one that made ChatGPT, he talked about the significant harm to the world, and also he talked even about the word of extinction. Funnily enough, Stephen Hawking himself, back in 2014, in an interview with the BBC, that was 9 years ago, he was, and I quote, said, the development of artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Now, although maybe we're not, this sounds a little bit, I don't know, gloomy in a way, but actually we are already seeing that. And I'm just wondering whether how we could actually, regulate that rather than celebrate it, just celebration for the sake of it. And we've done that already before, back in the second half of the 20th century, when cloning was introduced. We, in a way, celebrated that actually as, that was a great achievement and advances in science. But actually, we realized that could be a little bit unethical. Well, a lot of it, not just a little bit. That was unethical. So the UN mentioned that it's incompatible with the human dignity. The US banned it in 2001, and many countries, maybe just for therapeutic reasons, allowed part of it. But in France, for example, they just banned it, the whole of it. So what I'm trying to say here is that, yes, I do understand that, we need to advance a little bit more and not being stuck in where we are. But isn't the whole point of making humans' lives better, and it's for people's sake, once we realize that this is actually causing more harm to us, then perhaps it's no longer something to celebrate actually. And in fact, I think Ali mentioned a few examples, or maybe also Benjamin, when we talked about calculus, using the calculator, for example. Calculus was a way to advance, as you said. Language learning, on the other hand, in my opinion, at least, is an end in itself. That was just a thought that crossed my mind. Sweden, by the way, last week, with the Minister of Education, Lotta Edholm, said that digitalization at schools have gone too far, and they're now reverting back to traditional books, because they just realized there is too much screen time for children, and this is not something to celebrate again. And last thing I want to talk about here, if we talk about research as well, yes, chat, any AI could predict the tone of speakers and qualitative research and so on and so forth. But as Benjamin said, it's about the process. For me, being a researcher is more about getting through that, actually. I know there are fine details, but actually us spotting such fine details in the tone, whether the voice of someone was hesitant or loving, that's actually part of me also acquiring more criticality to it. So the point is not just to acquire the knowledge at the end. It's more about the process of getting there is what's teaching me. Very last thing, I don't want to take too much time here. Just want to mention steam engine, for example, which was invented in 1800s. The time, and from the 1800s until today, we're still using that, this engine. We're using cars today. We still are, and using fossil fuel. So yes, there were jobs for, say, carpenter, for example, who made carriages and horses, or, horse carriages. Yes, they were laid off their jobs. They couldn't keep their jobs, but they found time to find other jobs, in car factories, for example. So there was some sort of a transition. But for us today, this is way too fast. It's way beyond what we are catching up with. Even if we are trained today to use AI perfectly, we're not going to even have time to catch the second breath before something else comes up again. And then we need to keep, catching up with it. And this is now, has this made our life really better or not? And this is, I leave this, just kind of like thoughts. I don't really have any question as such. I'm just, thinking out loud, as they say. I'll leave it to you guys. And I'm really happy to, of course, to hear from you. I'm sorry for taking forever. Thank you.
No, Munir, that was a really, really valuable contribution. I think that's something that we do need to continue to talk about. And like one of the things I said is that, we do have to critically reflect on what we gain and what we lose from the technologies, and we have to talk to our students about that too. That if they use it to do some task and they didn't learn from doing that task, and that will be true of researchers as well. And anybody who engages with these kinds of tools, right, they will lose something from it. So they have to be conscious of what they lose. And yeah, there's wider questions like that. I know the European Union now is talking about, is on the kind of advanced stages of talking about regulating AI. I think Italy banned ChatGPT, so it was actually available there, but they actually banned it because of copyright issues, I think, or privacy issues. So I think this has happened very quickly, very disruptive, and you're right, we're playing a bit of catch up. But I think we still have to manage it as it is, and we still have to look at the potential of what it can do in what we are doing, so we can kind of better adapt ourselves to the reality of it as it is now.
Yeah, so to jump in quickly, there are interesting points raised by Munir. The existential questions that he raised about AI, making us extinct, are real concerns raised by experts. For example, there's a new book called Scary Smart by Mo Jawdat. I just put in the link in the chat for anybody who's interested. About, he talks about the control problem, and if AI can code, then it can self-replicate, then it can potentially see us as a danger or a risk to its own existence. We are just like cockroaches and just get rid of them and we can continue our own lives. So yeah, there are genuine existential questions with ChatGPT, especially since that it's now on the web. The other thing about learning a second language, just as Munir said, it's a goal for its own, but some people may disagree. Some people may say, now we don't need to learn a second language. We don't need to let our children learn the language of a different community anymore because it's not necessary. Well, let's preserve our indigenous culture. Let's preserve our own language, because learning a foreign language is not culture-free. It's not neutral. When you learn the language of a different group, you import some of their cultural ideas, some of their ideologies, etc., etc. So voices that oppose this, there are voices now, but they are shy because they know that learning English is important to get a job. So they kind of shyly talk about this. But I would imagine that these people will have a much stronger voice and much larger base once these tools become mainstream and say, stop teaching English. We don't need to teach English. We just write whatever you want to write in your first language. Let's preserve, say, Arabic. And then we have excellent translation machines. Just one click, you get what you want in any language you want. Why do we learn to learn a language? If somebody wants to learn a language, let them wait until they are 18 years old, and then they can choose if they want to learn a language. I can imagine this debate happening in the near future.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Munir. Raja, do you have a question?
Yes, hello. Thank you for the interesting interview. My question is, as teaching professionals, we know that learning is knowledge creation, not consumption. So how can we fit in the use of ChatGPT in our teaching practice without maybe teaching students or letting students abuse the technology rather than use it for promoting critical thinking and higher thinking skills? This is my question or my concern about the whole matter. Thank you so much.
I guess the key is is that they will become aware of this tool anyway. And without us guiding them on how to use it in ways that might help support their learning, then they're more likely to use it in improper ways that don't support their learning. So I think we need to have those critical discussions about the limitations of it, the bias within it, the risk of over-reliance on it, and then teach them also about how they might be able to use it for different aspects of learning. Like, how might this help you to learn vocabulary? How might this help you to learn to write a certain text? How might it help you to do this? So we need to develop like an understanding of how the ways it can help, the ways we can do that, so then we can help our students to understand how it can be used in that way. I mean, I think that's true of our devices, you know, our phones and things like this. It can be both. It's a tool for everything, isn't it? It's an entertainment tool. It's a work tool. It's a distraction tool. It's a communication tool. And we can use it in different ways that are both good and bad. And I think that's going to be true of ChatGPT as well. So I think our education has to raise awareness of how it can be used in a good way, but also at the same time be critical of its limitations.
Yeah, so let me add one point here. Now, one of the advantages of these AI tools is that we no longer have to dwell on mundane tasks. And if we don't dwell on mundane tasks, we will have more time to focus on higher skills, critical thinking. We can devote more time to it. You know, let ChatGPT, you know, produce the text, then let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's see problems in it. Let's see the biases. There's so many biases. I have another on my channel lecture where I talk about the biases, the different biases in ChatGPT. You can check it out. So many biases. Why? Because ChatGPT is trained on language produced by humans, and there are biases that are reflected and magnified by ChatGPT, reflecting society biases in society. So it should give teachers, if utilized well, the chance to focus on higher order thinking skills. Yeah, Joe?
Hiya. Thanks, first of all, for the really interesting discussion. I've really enjoyed every minute of it. It's been great. So my question is around privacy that we've talked about quite a lot already. So I've been looking at different Facebook groups around ChatGPT, of course, and quite a few secondary school teachers in particular are talking about uploading students' work or putting students' work into ChatGPT, using a rubric and getting feedback on it. So in other words, you know, putting examples in context. So some of the sorts of things we talked about already, but I'm presuming, or some people have talked about this already, about updating their privacy policy at school so that you get maybe permission from parents in order to do that. I just wondered what you thought about that, say, particularly at the K-12 secondary level, on so that teachers don't get into trouble. Would you recommend that a policy by a school is updated? And I appreciate this is all very new and very fluid, as it were, but is that what you recommend, or do you think it's something that teachers shouldn't be doing because it's the IP of the student and they would have to give permission and consent, which is a little bit about what we were talking about a moment ago about sort of GDPR in Europe and Italy banning it for a month, etc. I just wondered what you thought about that.
So it's a great question. It's an excellent question. Yeah, my thoughts would be that, yeah, we have to be very cautious with anything we upload to ChatGPT, and of course teachers should also be very cautious, and that's evidence of a lack of AI competence or AI literacy on the teacher's part if they're doing that without really thinking about the implications of that. I think, yeah, I think it's not unsensible for schools to have a policy on this, or at least to have a procedure to make sure that's happening, and also to make sure students are comfortable with teachers using it for that reason. You know, there's also the kind of affective factor that if students are thinking, you know, they think the teacher's giving feedback on their work, but actually it's not. It's exactly. AI. And things like this can affect their relationships with their teachers. It can affect how they see the role of the teachers. It can affect many different things. So that has to be a very transparent process, I think, if teachers are doing that. And it should be one that is everyone is comfortable with. Right? That's my thinking of it. Yeah.
And then likewise for, say, report cards. So teachers are saying, oh, I'm using ChatGPT to write my report card. So they're not naming the student, but they're sort of describing. In fact, there was a post recently on my Facebook group about a teacher saying, well, what I do is I say there are sort of 4 students who are quite similar. Ask ChatGPT to generate a report for those students. So they don't name the students, but they sort of describe the characteristics. Do you think that that's again over the line, or do you think that shouldn't be something that's happening?
That becomes grey, doesn't it? Because if it's used as an assistive tool, then it's different to being like, okay, can you write me a generic outline about a student? So there's a number of issues there that are being done. One is privacy. Are they entering any information they shouldn't be entering into a tool that doesn't have permission to have that information? If they are, then there's something wrong there. Are they just asking it to write kind of generic things without actually representing that student's real, experience or real evidence of what they've done? Then that's problematic. But if it's like, I'm using this to kind of support the writing of, I've got all these important things I want to say, but I'm not quite sure how to best to present them, then it's just an assistive tool doing the writing process, isn't it?
Absolutely, and teachers have been using comment banks for years, haven't they? So
yeah.
Don't name the student, but they sort of put in the characteristics and then get the AI to generate a well constructed paragraph.
Then it seems okay, right?
Okay.
Yeah. But I would still say that we still have to be conscious that should we be declaring our use? And at my university we're going for that idea that we should declare. So if someone does use it, they should probably declare this report card was created with the assistance of X tool.
And then you might get parental backlash as a result of that. Maybe if parents are saying, well, I don't want the teacher of my child to use AI. I want it to be from that teacher,
Well, that's the transparency thing and the buy-in, right? Yeah. So if teachers do that and then retroactively declare it, then that's problematic. But if they're like, we want to embrace this because it's got potential to release teachers' time in order to do other things that benefit your students' learning, one of the ways that we're going to suggest they use it is through supporting writing report cards, but they will still be responsible for those cards and they will still ensure they represent the students' abilities. Then you might get buy-in. But if you just say this was written by ChatGPT, then you won't.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll stop now, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm putting that's my teacher education hat on talking there, but yeah, that's
but I think what's important is that we all have a discussion about this because it's all so new. We sort of work out the good practice and the way forward. But that's been really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joe, and great background image. Fitting for the session. Any questions? Other people? Comments? Questions? Okay, so silence.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. This is Fatma Lawami. I have one small, tiny question. I will not take too long from your time. Firstly, thank you very much indeed for this informative presentation. Well, do you think, I know it might sound stupid question, but do you think in the coming near future, forensic linguists will be able to detect any plagiarism in ChatGPT, only if we consider it as a plagiarism, and plagiarism in academia field is considered as a crime? Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, would you like to have a go?
Potentially. We can never tell what might be possible by forensic analysis of these things. We don't know. I mean, again, it will be whether they can identify patterns, which is what the detection tools are doing now, I guess. Yeah, well, I guess we can't tell. I mean, the technology is moving so fast that the technology that's being developed, whether the technology that's being developed in order to identify and understand that technology will be equally as developed, I cannot say, if that makes sense. So
the other thing is that possibly our definition of plagiarism may change according to the technologies available, because sometimes it would be too limiting and humans can do more if they use this tool. So let's redefine what plagiarism means. And the bad thing is this, the good thing is that, maybe.
Yeah.
Any final questions? Comments? So we have a question in the chat. The question was about use ChatGPT as an editor for research writing. Is it okay for a researcher with weak English to hire an editor to edit his paper? Why not? Yeah, editing language, I don't think anybody will have any problem with you editing your language. It's just no different than Grammarly or any other tools out there. Even Grammarly uses AI anyway. So this is very superficial. You know, the controversy comes when you have ideas from ChatGPT that you didn't create, then people will talk about it. If this idea common knowledge, so that if you find them anywhere, then it's no problem. If it is specific knowledge, then you need to cite the references appropriately, and you get these references. So yeah, the higher you go, the more questions you have. Okay, so we have been here for more than 1.5 hours. It has been a great session. Thank you, Ben, for your time. I think it's late in your time zone. What time is it now there?
It's almost 10.
Almost 10. Okay, at night, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for staying with us and answering questions. And it has been a great session. And just as I expected, people are happy, and they still have many questions in the chat that we may not have answers to for the time being, but you know, this technology is still evolving anyway, and there is more. There will be a crisis confidence especially in academia for some time, that will have to struggle with, and then we will know what we are dealing with here. So thank you, Ben, for your time. It has been great meeting you. Let's hope that we meet in person at the future conference.
Thank you so much, Ali. I really, really appreciated the invitation, and I really, really enjoyed our conversation as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye.